Welcome into the Social Spreader on a Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in. We are loaded with options in terms of what a show revolving around sports wants to talk about. There's really a non-shortage of things that I could go over here. And you know what? I'm pretty fired up about a couple of them, so we're just probably going to stick with that. Um, before we go anywhere when it comes to the topics at hand, for those of you that have been listening, so all what 4.7 million of you, we're kind of doing a college hoops against the spread experiment, if you will. Um, I have a list here of roughly 34 teams that are really good against the spread or have a difference of 5 games, or really bad. And that's the same thing when it comes to college sports. Because if you are a crappy college team, there's really not much that you can do. And What I've been trying to do is find favorable matchups with with good teams being good fades and horrible teams being I'm sorry, with horrible teams being a fade, and with these good teams against the spread to be a lean. And Again, I'm going to beat this thing dead. All I'm trying to do is help you find an edge, help you pick some winners, maybe get some perspective on what teams you should be wagering on, what teams you should be paying attention to. But ultimately, trying to get some coin in your pocket. I mean, let's be real here. As I've said, as 10 old white men get $750 billion richer while millions of people lose their jobs. That's all I'm trying to do is put a little coin in your pocket, make rent a little bit easier for you to get. But before we do that, and we do have some scores from last night, not the worst, but as I said, I'm probably rarely going to cost you anything. I might not make you as much money on this show as you've hoped for, but I'm there's a really I'm willing to put a 95% chance I'm not going to cost you any major amount of money. And I went 14-11 in the playoffs. So if you did and that's with the over unders and with the spreads as well. But before we kind of jump into the whole sports thing, I do want to take a little bit of a turn here. So, as everybody knows, again, the droves and the millions upon millions of people that I have that are waiting eagerly for every word that comes out of my mouth. I'm a history buff, and as we enter Black History Month, I think it's more important now than it maybe ever has been to really be cognizant of the history and what's going on right now. As I have said before, history doesn't often repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And I started a segment about a week and a half ago about called just really simply back in the day, where something on this date, so February 1st, happened that was what I find to be prevalent either in today's current society or just a good little piece of history. So maybe when you're playing Trivial Pursuit or whatnot when you're out at a bar playing trivia, maybe you can get an answer right. So um, this is the story that I've wanted to, and this is the one that I found. February 1st, 1960, the Greensboro sit-ins. They were a series of nonviolent protests. Starting on February 1st, they went till the end of July 1960, and it was primarily in the Woolworth store, which is now the International Civil Rights Center and Museum in Greensboro, North Carolina. This ultimately led the F.W. Woolworth Company to remove its racial segregation policies in the South during the 1960s. And This wasn't the first sit-in of the civil rights movement, but I think anybody that kind of knows their history, the Greensboro sit-ins um, were very popular. They were very well known. I don't know if from the education that I have and the information that I have, if I know of any more popular sit-ins than these. Some of them, some people would say that this was kind of the motivating factor, almost the catalyst, if you will, for the whole movement of doing sit-ins. And I believe almost 100,000 people participated in, and it really just came to a point, or what the sit-in was specifically with this one. It was simply a group of African American people asking this country to treat them correctly, to treat them as people, to treat them as equals, to give them the justice, that whole with liberty and justice for all thing. That's all that they were really asking for. Um, I hear the same cries in 2022. That was 60 years ago. 60, 6-0. And I'm trying to be a lot more upbeat and a lot more, I guess, cheerful, if you will, on this show, because you attract, what's that old saying? You attract more flies with honey than you do shit. But that's not entirely true, because don't flies eat shit? Anyway, um, so this is it's important to know history, because, as I've said, it doesn't often repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And on February 1st, 1960, the Greensboro sit-ins, the nonviolent protests for people of African Americans and people of color in the South to simply be treated like people. Anyway, so that's something interesting. As I said, as a big fan of history and a big history fan, I guess. If you're interested at all in reading more about it, I'm sure you can find it on the internet. But that kind of leads into a topic that I've wanted to discuss for a while, and it just makes so much sense to talk about it now. Um, in so I've worked for 5 Fortune 500 companies. I worked for the largest tobacco company in the world. I worked for the largest cigar company in the world. I don't know the rules and everything, but you can do whatever research that you want to do and figure out who they are. Um, I've also worked for just very typical corporate America. I've worked in the stock market. Um, there are a lot of rules that are that are written, and whether or not they get enforced is is really kind of the interesting part, because you can tell a lot, not only about a person or about a company, about essentially what rules they choose to follow. And the National Football League, which always wins. If you watch the last 6 games, they always win. They can put their foot in it when it comes to Patrick Mahomes saying, "Yeah, you guys really kind of fucked up with the Colin Kaepernick shit. You guys really obviously ripped him away from his career. You've been treating him. I don't want to. I don't want to go down that road. But it won't matter. The Whatever the product is put out on the field, the people of this country have already shown you that they're going to watch, and there's really not much that's going to separate them. And so, even though the NFL always wins, no matter what, because that ship is just going to continue. And I think the power shift that we've seen, the wealth shift, the transfer of power, if you will, over the last 2 years, a small group of people within this country are always going to win, especially in the NFL. The Rooney Rule, which was implemented by the family of football, who now has 3 head coaches in their entire franchise history, one of which an African American, I believe the only African American now as a head coach, who's never been below 500 in a league that's 70% African American. There's only one head coach. And go ahead and do a quick Google search of the what, four head coaches that have been named in the last 2 weeks. Oh, and don't forget to read up on the bullshit smear campaign that for some reason Stephen Ross and the Miami Dolphins feel like it's necessary to do to Brian Flores, who is subsequently suing the NFL. Um, the Rooney Rule is non-existent, and I truly question whether or not it ever had any impact on anything ever. It's it's somehow quote unquote overlooked, overstepped every single time that a team goes through a new head coaching search. The rule was designed for equality. We know where equality is, especially when it comes to the amount of pigment in someone's skin is in this country. And why would it be any different in the old white man's toy league? And it's absolutely appalling. It is absolutely non-existent, and it's absolutely infuriating that so many people fall for it every single time. Just watch Jim Harbaugh. Just watch what happens with that. Um, Brian Flores at the end of his tenure in Miami, what did he win? 7 in a row, 8 in a row, or 7 out of 8, something like that. He won a lot of games in a row. Certainly did enough to keep his job. Um, and what, you've had him for 3 years, and then all of a sudden, all these quote unquote news reports come out about him being a jerk or hard to work with, and it's just nothing more than a smear campaign by the owner who has ties to Michigan. And the fact that Flores had to turn around and sue the NFL just for him simply to say, in my opinion, as the son of a lawyer, all this is saying is oh my god, shut the fuck up. Like, you need to get this guy to shut the fuck up. None of this happened. It's a smear campaign because he knew he screwed up in letting me go. And now I have to sue the NFL and coaches and go through all of this just because this owner decided to have a smear campaign against me, and I'm one of two African American coaches, and four white head coaches were just hired. Shall I continue? No, I shouldn't. Anyway, um, could have talked about Tom retiring. I think, you know what? Yeah, I can squeeze this in as an awkward. I don't know how you can transition from the Rooney Rule to someone retiring, but I'm going to try it, and I'm probably going to do it very awkwardly. Um, Regardless of whatever stats Tom Brady retires with, and he's got them, what I saw as the most Tom Brady thing ever is he led the league in passing yards and touchdowns this year. He led an epic comeback that if it weren't for some inept defensive backs, they would have, and if three of his offensive linemen weren't out, they would have beaten the Rams. He would have made another run. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be, that would have been San Francisco at Tampa. Either way, it's, again, it's not what his career stats were. What he did in his final year with the yards and the touchdowns and the FU, watch this, I'm still the best. Fuck all of y'all and the Deflategate horseshit. Fuck all y'all and everything else that had to do with anything about cheating with me. Watch this. Up yours. Now, how can you hate the guy? I mean, how? Um, he made me a lot of money. He made me pick a lot of winners. He helped me pick a lot of winners, so I have no problem with him. And wish him well in retirement. I don't know that much about him off the field. But it's a great way to go out if you don't go out on top, which I find very strange that he didn't retire last year after winning a Super Bowl at his home stadium, which the Rams have a chance to do. Hasn't like never happened in history. Now it's happened 2 years in a row where the Super Bowl is, the team that's there has made it to the Super Bowl. Anyway, um, let's do some lines. So we're going to continue on this theory or this approach with fades and leans. Okay. I've got one, two, three, four. I've got 7 college hoops games. All right. The first one that we're looking at is Providence at St. John's. Providence is a quiet 18-2. St. John's is 11-8. They're 8-11 against the spread. In their last 10, St. John's is 4-6 straight up. They're 3-2 at home. They 2-3 against the spread at home. Meanwhile, Providence is 9-1 in their last 10, and they're 3-1 against the spread on the road. I think the reason why wow, never mind. Whoa. Okay. I think the reason why St. John's is favored by 3 is 1, they're at home. 2, they beat Providence twice last year. These two teams met on January 8th. I do believe Providence was so these two teams met at Providence on January 8th. Providence was a 4-point favorite. They ended up winning by 10. So it's hard for me to say, especially after the run that Providence is now on, where they've beaten Georgetown, Butler, Xavier, and Marquette after they beat St. John's. Interesting. They played Marquette January 4th and then played St. John's. They played Marquette on the 30th, and now they're playing St. John's. St. John's was on the fade list. They've since won 2 in a row. They were 6-11 against the spread. They've won 2 and they've covered 2. Providence is 12-8. I think Providence is a good lean here, especially because I'm going to get 3 points. The next game, if it was football, would be a much larger story. Alabama at Auburn. We don't need to go over what Auburn is. They gave Bruce Pearl a lifetime contract. And wasn't Bruce Pearl given like a 3-year exile because of his actions, and now he's given a lifetime contract? My, how the landscape has changed. Auburn is 20-1, and I think they're the number 1 team in the country in terms of wins against the spread. They're 16-5. And Alabama is actually on our fade list. They're 8-13 against the spread. They're 14-7 overall. I get it. It's Alabama Auburn. But in Alabama's last 10, they're a 500 club. Auburn's undefeated. They're 9-1 against the spread. Like, they have been a juggernaut. It's been a fun ride with Auburn. And you know what? They're favored. They're a 6-point favorite at home. They played on January 11th. Auburn went into Alabama and won. It was a push, as it was a 3-point spread. Never mind. Auburn was an underdog. Interesting. Yeah, I think Auburn wins this, not easily, but I think it's a good lean to go with Auburn. The next one is kind of another one that's under the radar in the SEC too. We've got Ole Miss, which is 11-10, 9-12 against the spread, at LSU, who's 16-5. They're 14-7 against the spread. They're on our leans list. They've owned Ole Miss. They're 3-0 against them the last 3 that they've played, but LSU the last 5 is 5-5. But if you look into it a little bit more, they're 4-1 at home. They are 3-2 against the spread at home. Meanwhile, Ole Miss is 3-7 in their last 10. They're 0-3 on the road, and they're 1-2 against the spread. So as much as these two teams are limping in here in terms of going against the spread, LSU's favored at 12. I might sit this one out. this one. That's just too many. That's too many points for a team who's 1-4 against the spread in their last five. Um, they've whoa. So LSU has lost 4 out of their last five. Yeah, this is a. It's either lunch money on LSU or nada because it's nope. Nope, it's either lunch money on LSU or absolutely nothing. Another team on our leans list is Texas Tech. They're 16-5. They're 14-7. They're playing the Texas Longhorns. If you're a fan of the show, you understand that I love making fun of the Texas Longhorns. Um, they're 9-12 against the spread. The last three, Texas Tech has won 2 out of the last three. They average to win by 4, and that's what the spread is here tonight. Um, Texas Tech is 6-0 at home in their last 10. They're 5-1 against the spread. They're 8-2 against the spread straight up in their last 10. So they're hot. Texas is simply 5-5. Um, and also Texas is actually coming off a tough game. Tennessee played them really tough, and I think they might be a little bit tired. And Texas is 1-4 against the spread in their last five. So let's definitely go with the Red Raiders. This one's interesting. Air Force at Utah State. Air Force is 10-9 straight up. Utah 12-9. So you'd think it's kind of evenly matched, if you will. Air Force is actually on our leans list. They're 13-6 against the spread. They've been really good this year covering. Utah State is 11-9 against the spread. So there's really not much to necessarily go off of with these teams because it's kind of a crappy matchup. They're really 500. These clubs are 500. But what's interesting is that Air Force is 7-3 against the spread in their last 10. They're 3-2 on the road, but Utah State's 4-6 straight up and against the spread in their last 10. Now, 8 out of Air Force's last 10 went to the under. They're 0-5 to the under away. Utah State, 7 of their last 10 has hit the under. And so 125. Wow. With such a low number, it's hard for me to think that Utah State can cover 15. And again, we have every excuse to question Air Force. They're 10-9, but they're 13-6 against the spread. So maybe Vegas hasn't figured them out yet. I'm going to go with them. I think it's a good lean. The next one is a little bit even more complex. Cal at Stanford. So Cal is a very interesting team. They're 9-12 straight up. Stanford's 12-7. They're actually not too bad. California though is 14-7 against the spread. Stanford's 8-10. And so it's Cal covers. They might not be the flashiest team that you'll ever see, but for a team that's 14-7 against the spread, 4-2 against the spread on the road, and Stanford's 3-6 against the spread at home. They win, but they don't cover, and they're favored by 5. And the last 3 times these two teams have played, the average score is 69-68. Nice. So, man, it's hard for me to go with Stanford though, because it's hard for me to go Cal because Stanford's 8-4 straight up in their last 12, but Cal is on the leans list, so we're gonna continue the lean. Last game is actually the nightcap. It's Fresno at San Jose State. Fresno's 14-6 straight up. San Jose State is 7-12. Yes. Ha. So Fresno's really been interesting because they are actually 12-6 against the spread. A lot of people haven't been keeping an eye on them, I guess, and there's really no necessarily reason to. But Fresno's sneaky good. And they, as I said, they're 14-6 overall. They're 12-6 against the spread, while San Jose State's a 500 club. Well, they're 7-12. They're 10-8 against the spread. But here's the kicker: in the last 10 head-to-head matchups, Fresno's 9-1, and they're 8-2 against the spread. Their average margin of victory is 17 points. There's a certain quality that a matchup has where a team just has your number. And I'm going to assume, I have to assume, because Fresno thumped these guys by 20 the last time that they played, which is on January 11th. I have to think that the same thing is going to happen again. And I think it's a good lean. I think Fresno's been a very lucrative lean. And so that's all that we're really after here these days. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed a trip down memory road with the history buff here. And whatever action that you have here tonight, be it in the association, the NHL, which I'm this close from just giving up on, unless I go Florida money line. But at this point, you can't make anything anyway. But wherever you have action, good luck with your bets.